Have you ever been surrounded by people, having conversations, responding, even smiling, and yet, somewhere in the middle of it all, you felt completely alone? Not physically alone, but internally disconnected. As if no one in that moment could actually see what you were thinking, what you were feeling, or what was really happening inside your mind. It's a strange experience because nothing looks wrong from the outside. You are participating, you are present, you are engaged. But internally, there is a quiet gap between you and everyone else. And that gap doesn't come from silence. It comes from the feeling that even if you tried to explain yourself, something would still be missing. Many people assume this feeling means something is wrong with them, that they are too different, too complicated, or too difficult to understand. But in many cases, this experience is not about being misunderstood. It is about how understanding actually works. Real understanding is not automatic. It requires shared context, shared language, and shared attention. Without these elements, even clear communication can feel incomplete. One of the main reasons this feeling appears is the difference between internal experience and external expression. Your thoughts, emotions, and perceptions exist in a detailed internal form. They are layered, nuanced, and constantly evolving. But when you try to express them, they have to be translated into words. And words are limited. They simplify, compress, and reshape what you are trying to communicate. As a result, what others receive is not the full experience, but a reduced version of it. This gap between what is felt and what is expressed creates a natural limitation in understanding. Another factor is attention. In most conversations, people are not fully focused on understanding the other person. They are balancing multiple processes at once. They are listening, but also thinking about their response, relating the conversation to their own experiences, and filtering what is being said through their own perspective. This does not mean they are uninterested. It means their attention is divided. Because of this, even when someone is listening, they may not be fully absorbing what you are trying to communicate. Over time, repeated experiences like this can create the sense that others do not truly understand you. Emotional complexity also plays a role. Some experiences are not simple enough to be explained quickly. They involve mixed emotions, contradictions, and subtle shifts in meaning. When you try to communicate something complex, the listener may simplify it unintentionally. They may focus on one part and miss the rest. They may interpret it through familiar patterns rather than exploring the full context. This simplification is natural, but it can make you feel like the essence of what you are trying to express has been lost. Another important aspect is expectation. Sometimes, the feeling of not being understood comes from expecting others to perceive things in the same way you do. But each person processes reality differently. Their experiences, beliefs, and perspectives shape how they interpret information. Even if two people hear the same words, they may understand them in different ways. This difference does not mean one person is right and the other is wrong. It means understanding is influenced by perspective. When this difference is not acknowledged, it can create frustration and distance. Over time, these small gaps accumulate. Each incomplete interaction adds to the sense that something is missing, and eventually that feeling becomes familiar. Not because people are intentionally misunderstanding you, but because full understanding is more complex than it appears. As you begin to see this more clearly, the feeling of being misunderstood starts to change in meaning. Instead of viewing it as a personal flaw or a social failure, you begin to recognize it as a natural limitation of human interaction. This shift does not eliminate the feeling entirely, but it changes how you relate to it. One of the first changes is in how you communicate. Instead of expecting immediate understanding, you begin approaching communication as a process. You give context, you clarify, and you allow space for misunderstanding to be corrected. This does not guarantee perfect understanding, but it increases the likelihood of alignment. Over time, this approach can reduce frustration because it removes the expectation of instant clarity. Another shift involves how you interpret others. Instead of assuming they do not understand you, you begin considering what they are actually able to perceive based on their perspective. This creates a more balanced view of interaction. You recognize that understanding is not only about what you express, but also about what the other person is able to receive. This awareness can make interactions feel less personal and more contextual. Emotional independence also becomes more important. When the need to be fully understood decreases, the pressure on each interaction is reduced. You no longer rely on every conversation to reflect your internal experience perfectly. Instead, you accept that some parts of your experience may remain unshared or partially understood. This acceptance does not create isolation. It creates stability. You are no longer dependent on external validation for internal clarity. Another important change is selectivity. Instead of expecting every interaction to provide deep understanding, you begin identifying environments and individuals where alignment is more likely. These are not necessarily people who think exactly like you, but people who are willing to engage with complexity, listen attentively, and explore ideas without simplifying them too quickly. Over time, this selectivity leads to fewer but more meaningful interactions. Interestingly, the feeling of being misunderstood often decreases not because everyone suddenly understands you, but because you stop expecting everyone to. This shift reduces the gap between expectation and reality. When the expectation changes, the experience changes with it. You may still encounter moments where you feel misunderstood, but those moments no longer define your overall sense of connection. Ultimately, the experience of feeling like no one truly understands you is not a sign that you are alone. It is a reflection of how complex human perception and communication actually are. When you understand that complexity, the feeling becomes less confusing. And as it becomes less confusing, it becomes easier to navigate. Not by forcing others to understand you perfectly, but by learning how to communicate, interpret, and connect within the natural limits of human interaction.